The next couple things I'm going to do here, they're kind of rapid fire, right? So they're not going to take a long time to go through. So I'm going to go through a couple of different things all at once. I'm going to show you how to colorize the actual panels that we've just created based on their position to the attractor point. I'm going to show you how to modify. Well, actually, let me go back. I'm going to start with showing you how to not use one attractor point but use many. Then I'm going to show you how to colorize them based on their location and proximity to the attractor points. And then I'm going to show you how to use extrusions as a modifier based off of the position to the extractor points. So we don't have to do a lot in terms of redoing what we've already done. It's just tacking things on here and there at this point. So the first thing I wanted to do is show you the curve, the curve that's broken down into a list of points that we'll use to modify based on their position. So let's create a curve. So if you go into Rhino, just grab a spline real fast and just do something kind of sort of like that. Just a curve that goes through your pattern. Then in Grasshopper, we're going to go to curve and division, and we're going to divide curve. Now what this is going to do is take a curve, take a number of segments, and then it's going to output a list of points along that curve. It's very, very simple. So I'm going to go to params, I'll get a curve component, and I'll set one curve to the one I just created and plug it in. Now the default curve value here has 10. If you want to change that to make it a smoother subdivision of the curve, I would increase the number. So maybe you could go up to something like 30. So I just double clicked, type in 30, and it automatically gave me a slider from, I don't know what the maximum value would be, I guess upper limit 100. So at this point, what we do is change the input of the curve closest point to our list of subdivided curves. So we just need to make sure that they come through as a flattened list, which they are, and then we replace the connection to P. And if I decide to increase my count here, maybe, yeah, something like that. I could even change the size and then increase the count, something like this. There. Now you see that it's a little bit smoother, right? You can kind of read the curve through the pattern. It's very important to know that you can do something like that. So really, that's it for the first one, right? The first idea I threw at you for this exercise. And so this is a curve attractor. Now the next one is going to be the color rendering, right? So I want to show you how do I take a kind of gradient of colors and I'll represent the proximity of these panels to the attractor points. It's fairly simple. We essentially have to do a yeah, we got to borrow the subdivisions, don't we? Yeah. So we essentially have to do what's called a mesh UV, and then everything from there is similar to what we did with the Ladybug components where we used the gradient panel. So mesh UV is found under mesh, and I actually forget where it is. I don't use meshes too often. Well, I'll just type it in and find it. Mesh UV. Where is mesh UV? Oh, it's called mesh surface. Which is under utility. So under mesh and under utility, This one is a little bit more complicated than some of the other ones you might be used to, per se. And you're not going to intuitively understand many parts of this, but let's start plugging it in, and then we'll kind of go from there. So the u and v coordinates are similar to the x and y. They're similar to the x and y in the sense that it's a measure of orientation along an axial direction, but it's on a warped or irregular surface. So think of like the u and v. If you have a bent piece of paper, something like this, the u and v would curve with that surface, whereas the x and y coordinates would not. So we are going to plug in for the x into the u and for the y into the v. We'll go from there. The other thing that we're going to do is borrow surfaces that we are then going to turn into meshes. So for us, we can actually take the grid cells, which right now are just curves, and if we plug it into a surface input, as long as they're planar, it'll create surfaces with it. So I'll just plug this into surfaces. I do believe that needs to be flattened. Actually, maybe it doesn't, but you probably should flatten it as a best practice here. You won't be able to see the subdivisions yet. Actually, that's not the right thing. I think we need to plug the scale in. Yeah, let's plug the scale in. There you go. That's what I wanted. So, yeah, that's right. So then what we're going to do basically is take these newly created meshes and we're going to map them via the gradient. So now we're sort of at the end of the definition. We need to add on one more thing, and then we're going to work backwards to the connection. So the one more thing that we want is the mesh colors, mesh colors component. And really that's just going to take your base mesh or list of meshes, and then we're going to apply to it a gradient of colors. So this part is not intuitive, so I don't really have a good metaphor or anything like that for you. We just kind of have to follow along. So under params, we can pull from input the gradient. This was mesh primitive. And I'm pretty much just going to start with one of the presets for now. I'm not going to mess with the colors. This will be plugged into the C input, and so what it's going to need is a couple of different things. The L and the 1 are essentially a boundary, right? So it reads as a lower limit of gradient range and an upper limit of a gradient range. So which boundary is this? Anybody? No. That was a good try. Just kind of take a step back, right? So you started here at the 0.25, but the boundary that I'm talking about is the boundary of your list of numbers. So we'll have to break it apart into separate numbers. And if you recall, that can be done under math and domain, and it's under deconstruct domain. Interesting. That's old. So the start value is going to be your low limit, and the end value is going to be your upper limit. And then the last thing that you need to connect is just the list of numbers. So we go back to D and we plug it into the T input, and this is what you get here. There is one more thing. I do recall this happening. This isn't done yet, but you can kind of see what it's trying to do. You'll have to get it to remap to all of them, and oh, I forget how. Where's the value here? Let's see. Well, what I did in the past, I didn't think it was going to have to do this for this one, but let's try this. Let me just try it out. So x minus 1 on the u and v inputs. Darn, didn't do it. What's different? I'm going to try going back to the original point. See. Yep. True and false. $121, $121, $121. Nope, that didn't do it. Alright guys, well I'm going to have to work on this for a moment to figure out what's going on here. Give me a sec. Alright, let's bring it back in real quick. So I think I realized what part of my problem was. I have too many origin inputs. This particular definition, as I forgot, is meant to be built off of one surface rather than a list of surfaces, and I haven't quite ironed out where the connections are supposed to be made and how they're supposed to be grafted to get it to do multiple surfaces, which probably is possible. However, if you want to see what it is supposed to look like, I'll quickly give you a surface and a point that we're going to use it on. And so if we create a planar surface like this, I can reference that in. Sorry guys, I'm moving fast. I just want you to see this one. So I reference that in so that it's a surface like this. It will be where I test my 1 point. And let's see. You know what? Let me just move it over top of the whole thing. Like that. There we go. So I can re-plug in this stuff. And instead of that surface being plugged in, I can plug in this surface instead. So what you're getting is a read off of the original full-size surface. Okay, so I'll have to figure out how to break it down into scale factors for that. But the cool thing about that is you can also do a line just like that. So just throwing that out there, I'll figure out how to break it down a little bit further. So at this point, what questions do you have before I move into the z-axis a little bit? No? You're good? All right.